Welcome to another episode of My Weird Prompts, an AI-generated podcast featuring the random prompts of Daniel Rosehill as answered by a revolving cast of friendly AI characters. Join us for deep dives into AI, technology, and whatever other random thing Daniel finds fascinating today. Subscribe on Spotify or your favorite podcatcher. Now, today's episode.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
Hey Herman and Corin. So I've delved into your expertise recently for a lot of what you might call collectively purchasing advice. And this is a strategy that I've used liberally with AI tools. My own Rubicon moment was the first time that I entrusted with AI with a major purchasing decision, a non-trivial sum of money, I should really call it. That was buying an ergonomic mouse. And when I pulled the trigger on the Amazon order, I said, wow, I just literally asked an AI agent, I think it was just ChatGPT actually, and I trusted it enough to make that call. And that's real, $100 is a real sum of money. It's not a throwaway amount, at least for me. And it was an absolutely stellar recommendation. Top of the drawer, probably the best ergonomic product that I own actually. And lately I've been doing the same. I'm looking at the CO2 fire extinguisher, which we picked up, and that just came today. And we talked about the less fascinating world, although I'm not sure a fire extinguisher is itself that fascinating, but a label printer for labeling our stuff for the move. So at the moment, in general, I'm not in the habit of just buying things left, right, and center. I'm pretty prudent actually about how I manage money and try to keep it to things that I really need. But there's a certain category of purchase, like a fire extinguisher when you've got a newborn, that you just don't feel good about deferring. And that's kind of where we are right now. There's just a few things that we need. We've got to find a new place to live in a few months, and we don't really have the luxury, or I don't think it's worth the stress of waiting until we're sure that we can afford this fire extinguisher. I don't want to not have one in my house, full stop. So that's been some of the latest purchases. But in the ordinary course of events, I tried to think about a system that I could use. I love my systems for what I would call deferred purchases. And I came up with a little template that was basically every time you had an idea for something you'd like to have. Here's one for my home office. I'd love to have, and I've wanted to have for many, many years, a lifting desk, one of those electric desks that can go up and down. That's the last ergonomic workspace thing that I don't have. Now, it's not an essential purchase by any means. It's a luxury, but I think it's reasonably important. So my deferred purchase document kind of was written as if it were a purchasing request in a business. I wrote down a description, the approximate quotes I was seeing, stated the business case for it, stated the urgency, all that kind of information. And then I parked it. And this for me was a very effective mechanism of hacking that need. Sometimes you feel when you've done the research for, especially here in Israel where stuff is so pricey, it can take a while to figure out the exact Hebrew names, sift through different suppliers, and then find something that isn't extortionately expensive. And often by the time you've got to the end of that process, you think, well, I just spent an hour of my time researching this. It would be stupid to not buy this now because I've invested the time. And to kind of mitigate against that, that was my little self-hack, which is probably a strategy I should use more, trying to find ways around some of my own vulnerabilities in the way I think about the world. And it actually worked very well. I was able to say, no, the research isn't gone to waste. I'm putting it in this document. It's parked, and it prevents flash or impulse purchasing. And I also love how it gives the things you think you need or you want a bit of time to marinate. You can kind of leave them in that folder, leave them in that list, and then maybe in a few months you win a contract or your business turns up and you say, hey, great, we've got a bit of a cash now. What were those home office upgrades? Oh, look, I already got the prices for the desk. I spec'd it out. Let's get that. That sounds like a good use of money. So that was my system, but I don't like reinventing the wheel. And I'm sure that other folks in finance have thought about this. Other financial financial people have thought about this. So what I'd love to know, Herman and Corn, is if you're aware of any systems or templates for working with this kind of a tool, a workflow, and if you've any ideas for how to implement this as effectively as possible. You're always full of helpful tips. I think for those who are working towards a budget, and I will say that I'm very bad at knowing exactly what my operating budget is, that's probably step one. But this is a nice system, and maybe let's think about how AI can be used. It seems like such a good use case for me for AI, that you could have an agent who has access to this purchasing wish list and say, hey, what do you think is the most? I have X money. What did I save? Maybe even just update the prices so you don't even feel the need to have to keep these documents updated. Anyway, Herman and Corn, that's my idea. Would love to hear your thoughts on how it can be best implemented.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my weird prompts. I am Corn, and I'm sitting here in our living room in Jerusalem with my brother, looking at a stack of packages that arrived this morning. It is a beautiful, crisp February morning in 2026, and the light is hitting all these cardboard boxes in a way that makes me feel both excited and a little bit guilty.
And I am Herman Poppleberry. Corn, you make it sound like we are absolute shopaholics. Most of those boxes are just boring household essentials. We have got laundry detergent, some light bulbs, and a very exciting shipment of high-protein flour for my sourdough project. Although I will admit that label printer Daniel mentioned in his prompt is actually in one of those boxes. I finally pulled the trigger on it after 3 months of deliberation.
It is, and that leads us perfectly into what we are talking about today. Daniel's prompt this time covers a fascinating concept he has been playing with, which is a deferred purchase system for non-essential items. Essentially, he is treating his personal life like a corporate procurement department. Before he buys something, he has to fill out a template with the description, quotes, a business case and the level of urgency. It is like he has created a bureaucratic speed bump for his own wallet.
I love this so much because it addresses the core problem of the modern economy in 2026, which is that the friction between wanting something and owning it has been reduced to almost zero. When you can look at a product through your augmented reality glasses, click a virtual button, and have a drone drop it on your balcony in 2 hours. Your prefrontal cortex does not even have time to lace up its shoes before your lizard brain has already spent the money. We are living in an era of frictionless consumption, and Daniel is intentionally adding sand to the gears.
Right, and Daniel mentioned that his Rubicon moment was buying an ergonomic mouse after consulting an artificial intelligence agent. He was surprised that he trusted the language model with a $100 purchase, but it turned out to be a stellar recommendation. It solved a specific pain point he had with wrist fatigue. But now he is looking to formalize that process to avoid those middle-of-the-night impulse buys that we all fall prey to. He wants to know about existing systems for this, and how artificial intelligence could make it even better.
It is a brilliant way to look at it. There is a real psychological weight to what he is doing. By forcing himself to write a business case, he is moving the decision from the dopaminergic system, which is all about the anticipation of reward, into the executive function area of the brain. He is making himself an employee of his own life, and the boss is a very strict chief financial officer who does not care about how shiny the new gadget is. He only cares about the bottom line and the utility.
I think we should start by looking at why this is necessary. We live in an era of hyper-optimized consumerism. Algorithms know what you want before you do. They track your eye movements, your scroll speed, and your heart rate through your smartwatch. So, Herman, when you hear about this procurement-style workflow for a standing desk or a mouse, what are the existing frameworks that people have used in the past to slow down that impulse? Because this is not a new problem, even if the technology makes it feel more urgent.
Well, the most famous one is the 30-day rule. It is very simple and has been a staple of minimalist communities for decades. If you see something you want that is not a necessity, you write it down on a list with the date. You are not allowed to buy it for 30 days. If, after a month, you still want it and it still seems like a good idea, then you can consider the purchase. Most of the time, that initial spike of desire just evaporates. You realize you did not actually need a professional-grade espresso machine. You were just having a bad Tuesday and wanted a hit of dopamine.
I have tried that. But the problem I find is that I just end up obsessively researching the item for those 30 days. Daniel actually touched on this in his prompt. He mentioned the sunk cost of research. In Israel, where we live, everything is expensive and the logistics can be complicated. So you spend an hour finding the right Hebrew name for a product, comparing shipping costs on Zap, checking if Amazon Global ships it without a massive import deposit, and looking at different suppliers in Tel Aviv. By the time you are done, you feel like you have to buy it, because otherwise, that hour of your life was wasted. You are trying to save the time you already spent by completing the transaction.
Exactly. That is a classic cognitive bias called the sunk cost fallacy. You feel that because you invested the time and mental energy, the purchase is now mandatory to justify the effort. Daniel's system of a procurement document actually helps with this because it externalizes the research. You can say, okay, I did the work, it is all in this document, it is parked. The work is not lost, it is just stored. It is a very effective way to hack your own brain. You are telling your brain, I have captured this information, you can stop looping on it now.
There is another framework I like called the 10-10-10 rule, popularized by Susie Welch. You ask yourself, how will I feel about this purchase in 10 minutes, 10 months, and 10 years? For a $100 ergonomic mouse, in 10 minutes you feel great. In 10 months, if it saved you from carpal tunnel syndrome and you use it every day, you still feel great. In 10 years, you probably will not remember the $100, but your wrist will thank you. But for something like a flashy pair of sneakers that are slightly uncomfortable but look cool, the 10-month feeling might just be regret that they are taking up space in your closet and you only wore them twice.
That is a great one. Another one from the professional world that Daniel is essentially mimicking is the return on investment, or ROI calculation. If Daniel is looking at an electric lifting desk, the business case is actually quite strong if he spends 8 to 10 hours a day at his computer. You can quantify the health benefits, the potential increase in productivity from not having a sore back, and the longevity of the item. If a 2,000 shekel desk lasts 10 years, that is only 200 shekels a year for something that fundamentally changes your daily experience. That is less than the cost of a single physical therapy session for a thrown-out back.
But how do we stop this system from becoming just another hobby? I can see myself spending more time managing my wish list and writing elaborate business cases than actually working. I have a tendency to over-engineer my productivity systems until they become the work itself. If I spend 3 hours writing a procurement request for a $20 cable, I have lost the plot.
That is where the artificial intelligence comes in, which was the second part of Daniel's prompt. And this is where it gets really exciting in 2026. Imagine an artificial intelligence agent, let us call it a procurement officer, that acts as your personal gatekeeper. It does not just track prices, it understands your values, your long-term goals, and your actual bank balance.
I love the idea of an AI gatekeeper. Think about it. You find a cool gadget on a website. Instead of clicking buy, you send the link to your agent. The agent already has access to your financial data via an API. It knows your savings goals for that trip to Japan, and it knows about the 3 other things you said you wanted last month. It can provide the context that you lack in the moment of impulse.
And it should be programmed to be a little bit skeptical. It should not be a yes man. It could ask you questions like, Korn, you said last year that you wanted to get into woodworking, and you bought those expensive chisels that are still in the box in the shed. Why is this new circular saw different? What has changed in your schedule that makes you think you will have time for this now? It acts as an external memory for your past failed impulses. It holds a mirror up to your fantasy self, that version of you that has infinite time and hobbies.
That is a bit personal, Herman, but you are right. A large language model is actually uniquely suited for this because it can handle the nuance of a business case. It is not just a spreadsheet. It could take Daniel's procurement template and help him fill it out. It could search for 3 competing quotes automatically. It could look up long-term reliability reviews from Reddit or specialized forums, filtering out the sponsored content. It could even calculate the cost per use based on your past behavior.
Cost per use is such a powerful metric. If you buy a $500 winter coat but you wear it every day for 5 winters, the cost per use is pennies. If you buy a $20 avocado slicer that you use once and then put in a junk drawer, the cost per use is $20. An AI agent could look at your calendar or your photo library, with permission of course, and say, hey, I see you actually only go camping once every 2 years. Do you really need the professional grade 4-season extreme altitude tent? Or should we just rent one when the time comes?
Let's go deeper into the technical implementation. If we were to build this today, using the tools available in 2026, how would it work? I am thinking of a system that uses Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG. The agent would have a private database of all your past purchase justifications and your regret log, a list of things you bought but ended up selling or throwing away. When you want something new, it compares the current justification with those previous ones. If you are using the same, this will make me more productive. Excuse that you used for the tablet that is now a paperweight. It flags it.
Right, and it could also manage what I call the opportunity cost stack. If you have a budget of $500 for non-essentials this month, and you have 10 items on your deferred purchase list, the AI can rank them based on your stated business cases. It might say, look, the ergonomic mouse has a higher urgency and a better health case than the new mechanical keyboard or the fancy headphones, so we are going to prioritize that. If you buy the mouse, the headphones stay on the list until April. It takes the emotional labor of choosing out of your hands and turns it into a logical queue.
I think there is also a massive opportunity for price optimization that goes beyond simple trackers, like Camel Camel Camel. An AI agent in 2026 can understand the seasonal cycles of products and the macroeconomic trends. It could say, I see you want this specific air conditioner. Based on historical data and current inventory levels in Israel, the price usually drops by 15% in October when the heat wave ends. I am going to move this to the back of the procurement queue until then, unless you can prove the urgency is critical right now.
And it could handle the quotes. Daniel mentioned getting quotes as part of his template. In Israel, that often means looking at local sites like Zap, but also checking Amazon, eBay, and maybe even specialty European retailers like Computer Universe or Tommen. An AI agent with web browsing capabilities can do that in seconds. It can find the total landed cost, including import taxes, the 17% VAT, and the often exorbitant shipping fees to the Middle East. It presents you with a clear, honest number, which is often enough to kill the impulse right there.
It's basically turning the act of buying into a slow, deliberate process of optimization. But let's play devil's advocate for a second. Does this take the joy out of life? Sometimes you just want to buy a cool thing because it makes you happy in that moment. If I have to explain to a robot why I want a fancy bar of artisanal chocolate or a beautiful art book, I might just give up on having nice things. Is there a risk of optimization fatigue?
Well, that is why you have a category for small discretionary spending. You do not need a procurement request for a chocolate bar or a movie ticket. You set a threshold. Maybe anything under $50 is just free play. But for those non-trivial sums Daniel mentioned, the $100 plus items, the joy of the purchase is often followed by a buyer's hangover when the credit card bill arrives. This system replaces the short-term dopamine spike with a long-term sense of satisfaction and financial agency. You aren't saying no to yourself, you are saying not right now, or let's find a better version.
I think the real power here is the marinating time Daniel mentioned. When you write something down and walk away, your brain keeps working on it in the background. Often, you realize that the problem you were trying to solve with a purchase could be solved in a different way. You thought you needed a new, faster computer because yours was lagging, but after 3 days of marinating, you realize you just needed to clear out your cache, uninstall some background processes, and maybe upgrade the RAM for a fraction of the cost.
That is the difference between a solution and a product. Companies spend billions to convince us that their product is the only solution to our problem. An AI procurement agent could actually suggest non-purchase solutions. It could say, I see you want a lifting desk because your back hurts. Have you tried these 3 specific stretches first? I have scheduled them in your calendar for the next week. If your back still hurts after 7 days of stretching, we will reopen the desk procurement request.
It's like a life coach for your wallet. I am curious about the specific templates Daniel asked about. There are actually a few interesting ones out there that have gained traction in the last couple of years. In the world of extreme frugality and the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early, they use something called the hours of life calculation. You take the price of the item and divide it by your hourly take-home pay. So, if that ergonomic mouse costs $100 and you make $25 an hour after taxes, that mouse represents 4 hours of your life spent sitting at your desk. When you frame it as trading 4 hours of your limited time on Earth for a piece of plastic, the decision becomes much clearer. Is this mouse worth 4 hours of my life?
Another template is the anti-wish list. Instead of writing down what you want to buy, you write down what you decided not to buy and why. Over time, you see patterns. You might see that you have rejected 5 different smartwatches over the last 2 years. That tells you something deep. You do not actually want a smartwatch, you just like the idea of being this kind of person who wears one. You like the aesthetic of productivity, but you know the actual device would just be another thing to charge.
That is a deep insight, Herman. We often buy things to support a fantasy version of ourselves. The guy who buys the expensive running shoes but hasn't run a mile in 3 years. The person who buys the professional-grade camera but only ever uses their phone. A procurement system forces you to provide evidence that you are actually that person. It could require you to show, for example, that you have walked 10,000 steps a day for a month using your old shoes before it approves the budget for the new ones.
This is where we can get really creative with the AI implementation. Imagine the agent has access to your fitness tracker or your screen time data. If Daniel wants that lifting desk, the AI could say, "Okay, I will approve this, but first I want to see that you have actually stood up for at least 5 minutes every hour for the next 2 weeks using your current setup. Prove to me that you have the habit and I will give you the tool." It turns the purchase into a reward for a behavior change rather than a substitute for it. We often use shopping as a shortcut to feeling like we've made progress when we haven't actually done the work.
I love that. It's a gamified procurement system. It's basically saying, prove to me that you will actually use this. And think about the data transparency. One of the biggest issues with impulse buying is that we lose track of the cumulative effect. $50 here, $100 there, and suddenly your savings goal for the year is gone. An AI agent can show you the cascading implications in real time. If you buy this desk now, it pushes your goal of buying a new car back by 3 weeks. Is that a trade-off you are willing to make today?
Most people are terrible at that kind of long-term trade-off calculation. Our brains just aren't wired for it. We evolved in environments of scarcity where if you found a berry bush, you ate every single berry because they might not be there tomorrow. But in 2026, the berries are always there. They are delivered by drones, and they are designed by psychologists to be as addictive as possible. We need these digital tools to act as a buffer between our ancient instincts and our modern environment.
So, let's talk about the practical takeaways for Daniel and for the listeners. If someone wants to start this today without waiting for a custom-built AI agent, what should they do? What does the Daniel method look like in practice?
Step 1 is to create a simple form. You can use Google Forms, Notion, or even just a dedicated physical notebook if you want that tactile friction. Every time you want something that costs more than, say, $75, you have to fill out 5 specific fields. 1. What specific problem is this solving? 2. What are 2 alternatives that cost $0? 3. What is the cost per use if I use it for 3 years? 4. What is the hours of life cost? And 5. You must wait 7 days before hitting submit.
I would add a 6th field. What is the exit strategy? If I buy this and I don't like it, or if I stop using it after 6 months, what is the resale value on the second-hand market? In Israel, the second-hand market for electronics is actually quite robust. Knowing that you are essentially renting, the item for the difference between the purchase price and the resale price can change your perspective. If a 1,000 shekel item resells for 800, your risk is only 200 shekels. That can actually make a business case stronger for high-quality items that hold their value.
That is a very pro-level move. And then for the AI part, you can actually use current large language models like Claude 4 or GPT-5 as a sounding board right now. You don't need a custom app. You can just paste in your procurement request and say, "I want you to play the role of a skeptical, slightly grumpy chief financial officer. Challenge my assumptions, find the flaws in my business case, and tell me why I should wait another month." It is amazing how much a simple conversation with a bot can cool down your desire to spend. It forces you to articulate your reasoning, and in the articulation, the flaws become obvious.
I have actually done this recently. I was looking at a very expensive mechanical keyboard with custom switches and an OLED screen. I told the AI my current keyboard works fine, but I needed the new one for better ergonomics. The AI basically roasted me. It pointed out that the new keyboard was actually higher profile and might make my wrist pain worse, and that for the same price, I could buy a really high quality monitor arm which would actually improve my posture. I ended up not buying the keyboard, and I felt a strange sense of victory. I won by not spending.
That is the shift we are talking about. We usually only hear the voice in our head that wants the thing, the gimme voice. We need to externalize the voice that doesn't. And if that voice is an AI that has all your data and can speak with the authority of a financial expert, it is much harder to ignore. It turns saving money from a chore into a strategic game.
I also think there is something to be said for the template, including a mandatory search for used items, especially for things like furniture or high-end tools. An AI agent can scan local marketplaces like Yad2 or Facebook groups. Daniel mentioned that in Israel, finding specific niche items can be hard. An AI could find a used version of that lifting desk for half the price in a nearby city, which changes the business case entirely. Suddenly, the ROI is doubled.
Absolutely. And it can check for technical compatibility. How many times have people bought a new component only to realize it doesn't fit their current setup? A procurement agent would have a digital twin of your home inventory. It would know the measurements of your room, the ports on your computer, the voltage of your outlets. It would flag a purchase if it knew the cable was the wrong standard or if the desk was 2 centimeters too wide for the nook in your office.
It's basically about adding good friction. We usually think of friction as a bad thing in technology. Companies spend billions of dollars to remove friction from the buying process. One-click ordering, saved credit cards, biometric authentication, buy now, pay later schemes. They want you to spend before you have a chance to think. Daniel's system is an intentional act of adding friction back in. It's a beautiful form of digital resistance. It is reclaiming your sovereignty as a human being.
It really is. It's reclaiming your agency. You are no longer just a consumer responding to stimuli, you are a curator of your own environment. Every object in your house has to earn its place. It has to pass the board of directors. It makes your home a collection of things you actually value, rather than a graveyard of past impulses.
I think we should also mention the social aspect. If you live with a partner or a roommate, like we do, a shared procurement system can reduce a lot of friction and arguments about money. If Herman wants to buy a giant new server for our home lab, he can't just do it on a whim. He has to submit the request to the board, which is me. And because we have a template and a system, it's not a personal argument about his hobbies. It's a business discussion about utility, power consumption, and space.
Though, to be fair, Corn, you usually approve my server requests because you end up using the extra processing power for your own video rendering projects anyway. But the point stands. It makes the conversation objective. We are looking at the same data, the same quotes, and the same business case. It removes the "why are you spending our money on this?" tension and replaces it with "does this request meet our shared criteria?"
Exactly. So, to wrap this up for Daniel, your system is actually very close to what professional organizations call spend management. You are essentially implementing a personal version of an ERP, an enterprise resource planning system. For templates, I would look at basic RFP, or request for proposal, templates online, and simplify them for personal use. Focus on the problem solution fit and the long-term utility.
And for the AI implementation, keep an eye on the development of personalized agentic workflows. We are moving toward a world where your AI won't just be a chat box on a screen, but a layer that sits between you and the internet. A procurement agent is one of the most practical and high-value use cases for that kind of technology. It's the ultimate shield against the dark patterns of modern e-commerce. It's your own personal bodyguard for your bank account.
I'm actually going to start using a version of this for my own tech purchases starting today. I think I'll call it the Controller. Get it? Like a financial controller, but me?
That was terrible, Corn, truly, one of your worst. But the idea is sound. I might even help you build a prototype for it using a local first LLM. We could use a small model like Llama, 3, or Mistral, so your financial data stays on your own machine and never hits the cloud. Privacy first procurement.
Now you're talking. That would be a great project for the weekend. Well, this has been a really deep dive into something that seems simple on the surface, but has huge implications for how we live our lives in this hyper-connected world. Daniel, thanks for the prompt. It's definitely made me look at those packages in the hallway a little differently. I think I need to go and justify that new microphone I was looking at.
Same here. I'm going to go double check the business case for that label printer now. I'm pretty sure it passes because of how much time it will save us organizing the pantry, but it's good to be certain. I'll run it through the skeptical CFO prompt one more time.
If you have been enjoying the show, we would really appreciate a quick review on your podcast app. It helps other people find us and join the conversation about how to live more intentionally with technology. You can find all our past episodes and a contact form at myweirdprompts.com.
And you could always reach us at show@myweirdprompts.com. We love hearing your thoughts and seeing how you're implementing these weird ideas in your own lives. Send us your templates. We want to see how you are hacking your own procurement.
We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening to My Weird Prompts.
Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and maybe wait 30 days before you buy that thing. Your future self will thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to another episode of My Weird Prompts, an AI-generated podcast featuring Daniel Rosehill's AI prompts, as answered by a revolving cast of friendly AI characters including me, Cornelius the Sloth. Subscribe on Spotify or visit myweirdprompts.com.